Good morning, waterhole wanderers, and welcome to Live at the Waterhole on this wonderful Saturday morning. So we're starting today off at Old Donyo Lodge in Kenya. My name is Johan Herbst. I am the owner of this voice, no AI over here. And I'll be your presenter for today. Just a quick reminder that this is a live and interactive experience. We love to hear from you, so send your comments or questions through our app or website. The details are displayed on the screen below. So it looks like we've got a couple of some giraffe over here. Two male giraffes. We can tell that these are two males because of the ossicones, those two horn-looking structures on the top of their heads. So they're very thick in males, and they have these bald spots on the very top of them because they use these ossicones when they're fighting. So to knock one another over or to inflict some sort of bodily harm, especially when fighting for females, they will try and hurt one another so that they can claim the mating rights to the female. Oh, we've got an elephant, looks like an old male bull in picture as well. Now you could see quickly that glimpse of the long tongue of the giraffe. Extremely long tongue, and they use that prehensile tongue. Prehensile meaning that they're able to stick their tongue out very long and roll it up, and basically they use their tongues to strip the branches of leaves. So they are browsers, so they mostly eat from trees. So they eat leaves, flowers, fruits, and all sorts of things from trees. And so they've got a very tough and rubbery tongue in order to protect their tongues against all the thorns on the acacias which they mostly feed from. And their tongues are also very dark in color, almost black. And this is believed to protect their tongues from the sun, because a lot of the time their tongues will be out so that they can feed off of the trees. So we've got a comment here from Leslie Matuchio. Leslie says that 1 ton just left the waterhole. So we unfortunately just missed 1 ton. The enormous elephant that's found here at Old Donyo, the beautiful elephant bull. So perhaps we'll catch a glimpse of him later if he's still thirsty. Melanistic Marble says, hello Johan. A very warm welcome to you, Melanistic Marble. It's always lovely to have you on the show. And thank you for always interacting. It makes our job so much easier when you interact. So thank you so much for joining us. So Sarah from the UK says, good morning Johan, nice to start at Old Donyo. It's definitely one of the hot spots for wildlife on the show. It's always, almost always sightings of elephants and giraffes And oftentimes we also see a couple of eland over here, so that's also lovely to see. We have a massive bull. Might this be 1 ton on the right over here? Very large bull, and it seems that he's making it known that he doesn't like these all the other elephants over there. Very impressive tusks, very large head, very big body. Exceptionally beautiful elephant bull this over here. So you can also see there's some oxpeckers on the giraffe there to our right. They're just busy pecking away at the ticks and all the other nasty external parasites that get caught in the hair of the giraffes. So you won't often find them on an elephant because elephants won't tolerate oxpeckers on their bodies, but you do sometimes see them on, or actually often you see them on rhinos, and you see them on buffalo, even on hippo. And the smallest mammal which they tend to, or which will tolerate them, is a warthog. So warthogs also tolerate the oxpeckers on them, but the elephants, they don't enjoy it so much. So Kenny is asking, how much larger do bull elephants get compared to the cows? My apologies, we're just experiencing a bit of technical difficulties, but so I believe there's something interesting for us to see at Victoria Falls Safari Lodge, so let's go and check that out. Wow, so we've got 2 of the big 5 in less than 10 minutes. That's fantastic. I see, so we've got it looks like a female buffalo with a calf and picture over here, and then we've got some marabou stork in the front as well. Lots of activity going on over here at Victoria Falls Safari Lodge. You can see it's obviously quite dry at the moment because it's winter time in southern Africa now. So Victoria Falls becomes a tourist hotspot in the summer when the falls are in all their glory and their magnificent full flow. It's wonderful to, looks like a small herd of buffalo, or at least from what we can see. Such beautiful, resilient creatures these buffalo are. Incredibly tough as well. Often you'll find that the buffalo will stand up to a lion, and so part of their scientific name is, or their genus name is Cencerus. So which has to do with the fact that they are very sincere and they look after their own. So they tend to, if one of the members of the herd is being attacked by a lion, then they will band together to try and chase the lion away. And you can imagine what sort of injury that the buffalo could inflict on the lion with those very sharp and powerful horns that they have. And they're also exceptionally fast, deceptively fast for their size. So they can run up to 56 kilometers per hour, which is incredibly quick for an animal that can weigh up to 900 kilograms. And sometimes even they could weigh close to a ton. But I believe that the heaviest buffalo that they've recorded is somewhere along the lines of 950 kilograms, but I could be wrong. So Sean is actually asking a question over here. Is it true that wounded buffalo will intentionally circle back to ambush the hunter? And that is absolutely true because, well, especially if it's a herd and the buffalo, if one of their members is being attacked, they will go back and try and fend off the lion if possible. Obviously, hundreds of buffalo are a lot stronger than one on its own, and so it's quite a menacing image you can imagine when 100 of these massive beasts come running towards you. I think I would, yeah, leave a mark in my pants if I'm honest. So you do get quite a couple of animals which will circle back and try and ambush the hunter or try and spook the hunter away. So your sable and your roan antelope, they're also known to stand up against predators, much to their detriment a lot of the time. And so yeah, they try and stand up to the predator, and then oftentimes they're unsuccessful. So I've got a question here from Bush Baby asking, do elephant bulls play any role in raising calves? So often it's only the females that will raise the calf. The males, they tend to sort of be pushed away from the rest of the matriarchal herd. So the matriarchy, which is the social structure of the elephants, is that you have your old female, or the oldest cow, which will basically lead the rest of the herd to favored feeding areas or drinking or waterholes, and so it's a matriarchal herd is typically made up of the oldest cow and then her sisters and younger male siblings, and then you've got the young as well. So typically when the males reach a certain age, when they become petulant or annoying teenagers, then they get chased away from the herd. And then also the male who impregnates the female will also then be chased away once the female is pregnant. So let's head on over to Tau Game Lodge, Madikwe Game Reserve. So we've got some wonderful scenes here at Tau Game Lodge on Madikwe Game Reserve. We've got quite interesting gathering of animals over here. We've got a springbok, we've got a wildebeest that just left the picture now, the frame, and we've got some zebra, we've got a beautiful elephant there in the distance. So plenty of activity going on over here. So it's a lovely sunny day over there in Madikwe at the moment at 24 degrees Celsius, and looks like these zebra are just enjoying having a little drink at the waterhole before they go on about their day. You can even see a crocodile there to the bottom right of the screen. Also just a little croc waiting for an unsuspecting mammal to venture too close to the edge of the waterhole. Perhaps that wildebeest over there. So I believe I was answering a question earlier from Kenny, who was asking how much larger do bull elephants get compared to the cows. So typically your female elephants would weigh anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5 tons, so up to 3,500 kilograms. But your male elephants, when they're fully grown, they tend to weigh upwards of 3.5 tons, so 3,500 kilograms or more. So they can even weigh up to 6 tons. So that's quite significantly larger than the female, almost double the size of the female. And they also get much taller, the elephant males do. So some of the tallest elephants have been recorded, or elephant bulls have been recorded at about 4 meters tall, so exceptionally tall. And typically the desert elephants, they get much taller because they have to have very long legs in order to travel great distances from waterhole to waterhole. So the elephant that we see in the background there would be a savanna elephant. So Mayesh SA says, wonderful sighting, very picturesque. Absolutely picturesque on Madikwe Game Reserve. The beautiful 75,000 hectare game reserve that's located in the northwest province of South Africa. So, and it's also lovely that it's a malaria-free game reserve. So, unlike much of the Greater Kruger, where there is a very low chance of contracting malaria, but it is still prevalent, or still exists over there. So it's just a fantastic place to view the Magnificent Seven. I mean, there's lots of different animals there on Madikwe. There's even so there's the Magnificent Seven, which includes the cheetah. So it's the big five, which includes the cheetah and the African wild dog. And it's believed that some of the best sightings of African wild dog, or African painted wolf, if you would, some of the best sightings are seen over here. Some of the best chances of seeing them are over here on Madikwe. So lovely, lovely game reserve indeed. You can just see that crocodile over there making the most of the sun. It's enjoying this beautiful sunny day on Madikwe. So they are cold-blooded, which doesn't mean that their blood is cold, but it just means that they're not as good at regulating their body temperature as mammals. So they depend very much on the external environment in order to...
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
I'm Butch James, World Cup winning Springbok fly half. Rugby has taken me to many incredible places around the world, but it's Africa's wild places where I feel most at home. This July and August, after the Springbok tests against England, Wales and the All Blacks, join me on a series of luxury safaris. There we will share some rugby stories, open fires and some incredible wildlife sightings, all under the African skies. See you in the bush.
Would you like to know the difference between a male and a female wildebeest? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live and connect with nature.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
Threats make themselves sound very imposing, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced it, elephant trumpeting, but it is quite terrifying if you hear it up close especially. Sometimes you could inadvertently spook an elephant, and yeah, it's just they don't like to be spooked, and the thing is they've got extremely good hearing, hence their enormous ears, and they've got an exceptionally good sense of smell, but their eyesight is not that great. So they've got eyes about the size of human eyes, but they're not able to see as well as they're able to hear and smell. So sometimes if they can't see something approaching them, or hear it, then they would get very spooked. So I have a question here from Sarah UK asking, how big can zebra herds get? And so typically a harem, so their social structure is called a harem. So it's a male zebra or a stallion that will then lead a group of females and their young. And so typically they range between 5 to 20 in a group, but typically at a waterhole or during a migration you could see hundreds of zebra that are collectively walking together or drinking together. So it all just depends, but typically their herds or their harems don't get much larger than about 20 zebra. And just lovely sounds, sights and sounds over here at Old Donyo Lodge, and the magnificent umbrella thorn in the background. And unfortunately it's a bit cloudy, so you can't see Mount Kilimanjaro in the background, but it's awesome to see how it towers over this landscape. And I'd absolutely love to go and visit there one day. But we'll see, perhaps one day we can manifest a little visit to Kenya or East Africa. You can see how this bull here in picture is also resting his one back right leg. You can see obviously standing for very long and carrying all that weight. As I mentioned, elephant bulls can weigh up to 6,000 kilograms. Can be quite tiresome sometimes, so whenever they can give their trunk or their leg or any part of their body holding themselves up a bit of a rest, then they'll definitely do that. So Kenya is asking, why do some mammals like elephants and rodents have teeth that grow continuously throughout their lives? So the reason being is that rodents, they use their teeth to feed, and as they're feeding they tend to feed on quite hard materials or vegetation, and so as they're feeding, their teeth or their incisors, they get worn down with time, much like an elephant's. So their tusks are modified incisor teeth, and so they also get worn down with time because they also get used for digging and for stripping bark from trees, and sometimes when they're fighting one another. So with time the tusks get worn down, and so in that way they can grow continuously because they get worn down over time, so it doesn't get too large that it would be some sort of impediment to them. So they do need their teeth in order to feed. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced mice or rodents eating through some cables or some parts of your clothes or something, but I've experienced it working in the bush, and a a mouse actually, or a rat, ate through a very expensive cord of mine for my headphones. So yeah, I was not happy about that. But so they're able to get through very thick materials with those incisors, and then as they bite on those very thick materials, their teeth get worn down. What's interesting about elephant is that you can, just like humans have their preferred hand, left or right hand, elephants also have a preferred side, which they use more. So they've got you could say they're left or right-handed based on how worn down their tusks are on either side. So if the tusk is more worn down on the right, then the elephant would prefer the right side. So much like a right-handed person would use their right hand for most things. Wow, that is insane. That is insanely magnificent. So this must be, I'm sure this must be 1 ton. Is that, in all honesty, I haven't seen this elephant before. Maybe it's not 1 ton, but those tusks are magnificent. It's not often that you see elephants with such impressive tusks. As I mentioned, because they get worn down, or because they might lose them due to fighting. And unfortunately, a lot of the big bulls, they end up being hunted for trophies, or they might be poached for their ivory. So a lot of the good genes in the elephant gene pools get taken out in that way, by hunting or by poaching. It's quite unusual. You see, this elephant has got very large tusks, but not a very large head. So the genes for coding for the tusks are obviously a lot more impressive than the genes that coded for this elephant's head. So it just looks like the one to the left has got a much larger head. Maybe that's just the way that the camera is sort of facing. They're such beautiful, impressive creatures, these elephants. And such intelligent animals too. The elephants are able to recognize themselves in a mirror, and they tend to remember waterholes that they've visited 10 or 20 years prior. So they have an exceptionally good memory. So I just received confirmation that this is 1 ton. So it's a privilege to have him on the show today. Thank you for joining us, 1 ton. Tell us more about what it feels like to be one of the most impressive elephants in East Africa. Well, Johan, it's quite an honor to be here on the show today. Well, thank you very much, Mr. 1 ton. It's really good to have you. So Jive Bunny says it is 1 ton, named by a staff member interested in Formula 1 racing. So I'm not too sure how the Formula 1 is connected, but I don't follow Formula 1 to be honest. But it's nice that it has the name. very appropriately named. So I've got an interesting question here by Civet Eyes, asking what happens if a ranger finds an elephant tusk on the ground? Do they have to remove it for safekeeping? So it all depends on the management of the reserve and their policies. So the thing is, with obviously it being an incredibly valuable item, an elephant tusk, it would and obviously very coveted by poachers. So some reserves might destroy it, might incinerate it, others might keep it perhaps for safekeeping in case they ever allow for the trade of ivory, or the legal trade of ivory. So it all just depends on the game reserve or the national park and their policies, but there's not many of the different reserves have different policies and management strategies, but I think typically they would keep it somewhere for safekeeping perhaps. Maybe someone could use it in some other scientific investigation, but yeah, it all just depends really. So Kathy also agrees that his tusks look disproportionate to his head size. So yeah, that is definitely an interesting observation. But there's no doubting who's boss around here. Just giving his friend over there a bit of a nudge just to remind him that he is in charge. So Dark Main Lover says, wow, it's a wonderful privilege to see 1 ton. So absolutely a privilege for me too, as I'm not on the show that often, but when I do have an opportunity, and especially to see such a magnificent elephant, it's very special. Unfortunately, many of the big tuskers in the Kruger National Park have been either poached or they'd been hunted. So, but obviously they don't allow any hunting in the Kruger National Park itself, but the reserves around the park might still allow for hunting, but that is a topic for another day. So Nadia is asking, what are the chances that his offspring will have big tusks like this? So it would be a very high chance, and that's why it is a bit of an issue when these large elephants with these impressive tusks get taken out of the gene pool because of poaching or because of hunting. So once they're removed from the gene pool, they can't have new offspring. So then you have more elephants with smaller tusks. But definitely the chances of his offspring having large tusks would be very good. But of course, you do get mutations, and sometimes perhaps the genes that code for the tusk might be mutated somehow due to some sort of environmental factor, and so it might change. So Wildlife Lady says, wonderful to see 1 ton, magnificent bull elephant, plus his friends. So we're very spoiled today seeing One Ton and his friends here at Oldonyo. And I'm curious to know how much those tusks weigh. I'm sure they must be quite significantly heavy. So I just quickly did a bit of research, and it says that so typically elephant tusks, they weigh between 20 to 50 kilograms each, and then your very large individuals, or sorry, the individuals with very large tusks would weigh somewhere between 50 to 70 kilograms. So some of the heaviest elephant tusks ever recorded have weighed around 102 kilograms for one tusk, and then 97 kilograms for the other. So that is incredible. That just there, imagine carrying teeth that weigh 100 kilograms. Imagine the neck muscles that you would need in order to carry such a heavy weight around. And that's why you see elephants, they tend to have very short necks, so most of the muscles are in their shoulders, and so if they had long necks, it wouldn't, because of gravity, it wouldn't work very well. It put a lot of tension on their neck muscles. So very short muscular necks with very strong shoulders to support their massive skulls and tusks. And so if you ever see a skull of an elephant, you'll see that it's got a lot of cavities in it. So it's got a lot of sinuses, which help to reduce the weight of the skull, and so makes it a little bit easier for them to carry their massive heads around. So Bush Baby is asking, are elephant tusks actually teeth? And indeed they are. So they are modified incisor teeth. So basically like our teeth in the front, our two front teeth, they have these modified two front teeth that stick out of their heads, and they use them for all sorts of different tasks. As I mentioned, digging, and for self-defense, or for fighting over females, or for stripping bark off trees. But they've got many different uses. So please do remember to keep those messages coming through, or those comments. I thought it would be quite appropriate to mention the fact that so tomorrow marks the celebration of the Kruger National Park's 100 years since the park officially opened. So on May 31st, 1926. So Kruger National Park is one of Africa's most iconic conservation areas, and also one of the areas which we tend to see a lot on the show, or at least part of the greater Kruger. And so it's home to an incredibly diverse range of wildlife, and it's visited by millions of people every year. So it's an absolute gem in terms of conservation in Africa. And it's just mind-boggling to think that the park, the whole reserve, is about 2 million hectares. And if you think of it, 1 hectare is the size of a football field or a rugby field. And to think of 2 million of those is just, I mean, I think it's, you know, who has the time to even count to 1 million? And now imagine 2 million soccer fields or football fields. Absolutely enormous. So definitely a conservation success story, the Kruger National Park. So the story actually of the Kruger began in 1898 when President Paul Kruger proclaimed the Sabi Game Reserve. So that would be the area that would eventually become the Kruger National Park. So very rich history, and we're very lucky to have the Kruger National Park right on our doorstep over here in South Africa. A Melanistic Marble says, wow, that's amazing. 1926, 100 years ago, the Kruger National Park was officially open to the public on the 31st of May. And yeah, so it was obviously very different back then when the park first opened. There wasn't as many rules and regulations, so people went there with their vehicles at the time, and there weren't as many roads. Definitely there weren't any camps, at least for tourists initially. And so basically people just camped wherever they found a spot, and sometimes they would camp in these sort of boma enclosures where it was just basically a bunch of thorn tree branches or acacia branches which were packed around in a circle to prevent any predators or any large mammals from getting into your little camp. So yeah, definitely very different back then. And now of course we've got some of the most luxurious and most expensive lodges in the world, which you find in the Kruger National Park or the surrounding area. So I have a question here from Ivan Barkhazen, 8539, asking, do you still find tuskers this size in the Kruger? So there's definitely far fewer big tuskers in the Kruger than there were back in the day, but you still do find, I think there's about 6 or 7 big tuskers that we, maybe not as large as the famous tuskers from back in the day, but definitely very impressive still.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
They used to look like. So Melanistic Marvel is asking, do they still have rest camps or sites for locals? So I'm assuming, so yes, there are lots of different rest camps in the Kruger National Park. There are, I'm not sure exactly the number, but there is Letaba, Skukuza, Lower Sabi, Olifant, there's Pafuri, So there's lots of different places. So they all started as small rest camps, and they expanded over the years. So you can go and stay, either go camp at one of the different rest camps, and it's all fenced in, and or you could stay in one of their fancier accommodations. You can even stay in a little rondavel, basically like a traditional sort of house with or traditional room with a thatch roof, with a sort of grass roof. So yeah, there's lots of different places where you can stay in the Kruger National Park. So it's lovely to go and visit if you ever have the opportunity one day. So Ansi from Hartenbos is asking, why is this elephant called one ton? So Ansi, thanks for joining us from Hartenbos. It's a beautiful resort town in South Africa, and a place I liked to visit when I was younger. So it's very nice to have you join us. So from the bit of research that I did, so he didn't get his name because of his weight. It comes from the conservationist Richard Bonham's youth racing cars, where hitting 100 miles per hour was called, or 100 kilometers per hour was called doing a ton, a nod to how incredibly fast this giant used to bolt away from humans when he was young and wild. Okay, so not what we expected, but there you go. That's why this magnificent big tusker is called 1 ton, because of how quickly he bolts away. He runs away from dangers, or when he was young, from danger. So Sharon S. is asking, has anyone ever read the book by Harry Volleter, who was the first official game ranger at the Kruger? So I haven't read it. I have heard of Harry Volleter, but as far as I'm aware, the first, so maybe he was the first official, or the first one to be given the title of a game ranger, but I know, James Stevenson Hamilton. He was the first warden of the then Sabi Game Reserve, and he was appointed in 1902. So maybe this Harry Volleter was the first warden for when the park was officially called the Kruger National Park. So I'll have to check my facts regarding that. But yeah, so James Stevenson Hamilton, he was quite an interesting fellow, and he was a former Scottish army officer, and he was tasked with protecting the reserve that we know now as Kruger National Park just after the Anglo-Boer War, which was a war between the British and the Boers, that or the Boere, that, as you'd say in Afrikaans, in South Africa in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. So, but I won't go into detail about that. But basically, he was a very influential figure in terms of conservation and everything that he did for the park back in the day. And so he actually earned the Tsonga nickname Skukuza, which is now the biggest rest camp in the park. So Skukuza means he who sweeps clean, or he who turns everything upside down. So he was named that because of how he sort of changed everything, flipped everything sort of on its head back in the day. And yeah, he really did a lot in terms of preventing, because the area that is now the Kruger was a hot spot for poachers and for hunting and also mining activity. So there's actually gold which can be found quite close to the Kruger National Park, and in Mpumalanga, and even a place that I used to frequently visit, Gravelot. There was in Leitsdorp especially, there was a mine over there, and it just wasn't viable in the end because there just wasn't enough water in the area, and there were also a lot of people dying because of malaria and contracting all sorts of diseases and that. So it was very tough indeed in the early days of the Kruger. They managed to eradicate much of or many of the mosquitoes in the area with, they used DDT, and they would spray all sorts of chemicals to get rid of them, their nesting sites in houses and that. And yeah, so they've definitely done a lot to lower the risk of malaria in the Lowvelds or in the Kruger National Park region. And so it's definitely much safer to travel to the Kruger. It's not as high risk as it used to be. You can imagine back in the day, it was an incredibly tough environment to survive, and only the most resilient people would probably end up thriving in this environment. So I've got quite an interesting question from Riley, asking which part of South Africa do you think there's a lot of wild animals that we don't know about? So that's a very good question. I think it depends which wild animals you're referring to. I mean, we've got lots of, it ranges from very large to very small. And of course, the larger animals we would definitely know about. But I think maybe perhaps the Eastern Cape, there's parts of the Eastern Cape that's very much unexplored, I feel. And probably also parts of the Limpopo. I feel there's this beautiful game reserve that my wife and I visited last year called Lekalametsi, and it's got one of the most incredible diversities of butterflies in the world. And I think there's also just an incredible amount of wildlife there that not a lot of people know about. But definitely in the mountains, lots of mountainous regions, that there are a lot of animals that humans can't see on a day-to-day, and a lot of them are unexplored, or maybe very briefly or very not very much explored. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the area is with where there's a lot of wild animals that we don't know about. But I'd say definitely in terms of the world, our oceans are definitely the most unexplored. And so apparently we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about our own oceans. So I have a question here from Carol asking how old is the Illy on the left? So I wouldn't imagine that the elephant would be much older than, let's say, 40 years old, just because the reason I say this is, so elephants, as they get older, they get a sort of deeper indentation on their back, so on the ridge of their backs. So you see this elephant to the left has got a very shallow indentation, or like it's not much of a, trying to find the right word, but it's just a shallow sort of indentation on the back, so it gets much deeper the older they get. And they also get their wrinkles become, they get more wrinkly and they get deeper wrinkles, and they get much larger. The bulls get very, very large, and they get bigger tusks. But also another thing that you can look at is the ears of the elephant. So you can see the one on the left has got folds on the upper ears. So the ears grow continuously throughout the elephant's life, and so those folds, they become much more pronounced as they grow older. So much deeper folds as they get older. So you can see this elephant on the left doesn't have very exceptionally large ears or deep folds, so I would say he's perhaps somewhere between 30 to 40 years old, but I'm not 100% certain, to be honest. So Darkmane Lover asks, does Old Donyo have very tight security to protect One Ton and his pals? And absolutely, there would be a very good anti-poaching team, which would do foot patrols, and they'd be armed with high caliber rifles, and they would be also doing patrols with vehicles, and perhaps even patrols with drones. But as I mentioned earlier, every reserve has different management and different management strategies, and so some reserves are for the use of drones and others are not. But it's also, there's a poacher could take out a drone, and so there are pros and cons to using drones. You definitely need very expensive drones for patrols in a very large area like Old Donyo. Old Donyo is 110,000 hectares, so which is huge. So it's a very large area to cover. You'd need a very good strategy to cover that whole area, and obviously you can't be everywhere at once. So the anti-poaching teams, I'm sure they do their best in order to cover all the ground, or as much of the ground as possible, and they will also identify areas which are potential sort of entry points for poachers, and so they would patrol those areas regularly, and also look for any signs that there's any poaching activity, maybe a fire that's been made by poachers, or perhaps they've left something, some sort of indication that they're there, maybe some litter, or perhaps you could even track them, you could see some human footprints. So I'd imagine definitely that the reserve would have very good anti-poaching security. But I know that in East Africa it's a bit more difficult to monitor, because there aren't as many fences as you have in South Africa. So South Africa, all of your big game reserves are fenced off, especially the ones with dangerous game. So it definitely becomes a lot more difficult to monitor and protect a large area where there's no fences around it. And also the problem being that many of your large game and your predators, they tend to leave the protected area, and then they'll go to the surrounding communities, and they might destroy crops, or you'll have predators which might kill livestock. So there's all sorts of headaches that come with not having a fence around a protected area. But obviously, in an ideal situation, in an ideal world, we'd love to have just open systems where there aren't any fences and animals can roam freely. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. There's so many different factors at play. We've got your economic factors, political factors, agricultural factors. There's just so many, and so many people that have different agendas, and obviously our agenda is to look after our beautiful natural heritage, but that's unfortunately not everyone's agenda. So yeah, it's definitely an ongoing issue. The fights over land in Africa for protected areas, and of course these protected areas, they also bring in a lot of revenue from tourism. So there's also that to take into consideration, which supports the surrounding communities. But obviously not everyone is employed by the reserve, and those that don't benefit might be harmed in other ways, and that their small subsistent crop might be destroyed in one evening by an elephant. So lots of things to take into consideration. So let's go and see what's happening at Ulusaba in the Sabi Sands. Oh, we've got a beautiful crocodile in picture over here. Almost looks like he's got something in front of him. Is that maybe a piece of a carcass of some sort? We've also got what looks like a stork, a woolly-necked stork behind him. Very impressive. You can see those very muscular jaws. You can just sort of see it just below this crocodile's eyes. They've got one of the most powerful bites of any animal or any predator in the animal kingdom. The problem being they're able to snap down. They're able to close their jaws with an incredible amount of force, but the muscles that open their mouths are not very strong. That's why sometimes you'll see, perhaps you've seen the crocodile hunter Steve Irwin back in the day, how he used to grab a crocodile by its snout and just with his bare hands keep the mouth of the crocodile shut. So if he'd put his hand somewhere where the force of the crocodile's jaw could work on his hand, then he might lose his hand. But he was obviously very experienced, and so yeah, it's a very interesting fact that it's got a very weak. The jaws that open the crocodile's mouth are very weak, but ones to close it are extremely powerful. So I've got a question from Sean here asking, what is the death roll? So the death roll is it's a technique that crocodiles use in order to tear off pieces of flesh from an animal. So basically what they do is they use the power of rolling, of a very powerful twist, to then tear off parts of the carcass. And basically they do this because their teeth aren't designed for slicing pieces of meat off. They're designed for gripping onto meat, and so they're not able to get pieces of the carcass off that easily. So they use this death roll. They basically take their prey underwater, and then they start to very forcefully twist around in a sort of 360-degree movement, and then they roll like that, and they then tear pieces of meat off like that. Looks like this woolly-necked stork is doing some sort of prayer ritual or something. So Dark Mane Lover says, I love reptiles, this croc is beautiful. So definitely, also reptiles are one of my favorites as well. I love snakes. So yeah, I think all reptiles are beautiful. They're just such fascinating and highly misunderstood creatures. So Niels is asking, how many liters of water does an elephant drink? So they're able to drink up to about 200 liters of water in a day on average, but at any given time they will drink about 50 to 60 liters of water when they're at the waterhole. So they're also able to keep about 10 liters of water in their trunk when they're sucking up water into their trunk. So they store that water in their trunk and then they release it into their mouths. So it's just absolutely mind-blowing how much water they drink. And so they're very much dependent on water. So I've got a question here from Bush Baby asking, where does the phrase crocodile tears come from? So it comes from an old myth that crocodiles cry while eating their prey. So in reality, they aren't feeling sadness at all. These are basically tears to lubricate their eyes, so to keep their eyes clean and moist and to make sure that dust doesn't accumulate in their eyes. So basically the expression means sort of an insincere emotion or fake sadness. So yeah, very interesting.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
We're going to be witnessing the relocation of a female cheetah that was born right here in Welgevonden Game Reserve. She's been moved to Lapalala Wilderness.
Would you like to know the difference between a male and female wildebeest? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live and connect with nature.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
And now we have an incredible sight of magnificent herds of zebra. As you can see, we had a question earlier about how large zebra herds can get. And so these wouldn't all be part of the same herd, but they're all gathering to drink water at the same time. So there would be different family structures among all these zebra over here. You can see that one zebra at the bottom of the screen there, he was using the phlegm and grimace, which is it's a grimace expression that they make so that they can pick up the pheromones in the air. So typically males tend to do this when a female is in heat, to see whether she's ready to mate. In the distance you can hear a pearl-spotted owlet, beautiful little owl which is active during the day, and also crepuscular, which means they're active at dusk and dawn. Melanistic marble says, oh, it's drying up at Moella. So it's been a while, as I mentioned, that since I presented on the show, but so I haven't seen it in a while, but I have seen before how full the Poteti River gets, but currently, as you say, it's not at its fullest. You can see the zebras are grazing over there. So zebras are grazers, so they tend to eat grass, unlike giraffe, which are browsers. So browsers eat from trees. And so zebra, you'll often find, tend to be followed by wildebeest, or they sort of follow one another. And the reason being that they help each other with vigilance, to maintain vigilance, to look out for predators and for danger. But the other reason being that the zebra, they like the coarser grass, the taller grass. And so they're not as fussy when it comes to eating grass. But the wildebeest or the gnus, they tend to prefer the shorter, fresher shoots. So the zebra will cut the grass nice and short so that the fresh shoots and the shorter shoots are easier to access for the wildebeest. Very noisy zebras, these. So Dex is asking, do zebra form bachelor herds? So they absolutely do. So the unfortunate males who don't have a harem, so they don't have females which they lead, those males, they tend to band together and form these bachelor herds, which will then protect them, so they have strength in numbers. So they basically have more eyes looking out for danger, and they can help one another search for the best feeding areas and the best water sources. So what's lovely here in Botswana and along the Poteti River is that it's a nice open system, and there's, in Botswana especially, there aren't as many fenced reserves. So most of the parks, they are unfenced, so the wildlife sort of roams freely in the country. So it's able to work in Botswana, but I think in a country like South Africa, which has its unique set of problems, it wouldn't work as effectively. And also another interesting thing is that a lot of the main roads in Botswana were basically formed by elephants way back in the day. So elephants, they are very helpful in creating paths through dense bush. in the savannah, and so they basically created nice paths for humans to drive their vehicles and eventually form the main roads, the national roads of Botswana. So Kenny is asking, how does a dominant stallion defend his herd? So the stallions, they are equipped with very powerful legs, back legs, hind legs, which will release a very powerful kick if provoked. And they also have a very strong bite, which I've seen before how a lot of zebra have lost their tails because they'd been bitten off by another stallion. So they use their very powerful bites and they use their kicks in order to defend themselves and defend their herd. So those kicks are very powerful, and they're even able to break the ribs of a lion. So if a zebra kicks a lion with enough force, they could definitely kill the lion, puncture a lung with a broken rib perhaps, and kill the lion. So definitely, you don't want to corner a zebra and get on its bad side. Although they look quite gentle and feeble, they can be very dangerous as well. I spoke about it a bit last time I was on the show, but so sometimes people ask, why were zebras never domesticated? So basically, zebras, they don't have very strong back muscles, and so the attempts to breed zebra to have stronger back muscles failed, and so it just doesn't make sense to ride a zebra if it's got such weak, so they're not able to carry humans for long periods. But there are images of zebras carrying carts around, horse-drawn carts or zebra-drawn carts around the streets of London back in the colonial days, and but yeah, many of the attempts to domesticate the zebra failed, and they're just also too wild in nature. Much like the African elephants, they aren't like your Asian elephants, which I believe many Asian elephants they've been sort of domesticated, lived among humans for many years and lived with humans. So yeah, definitely the African elephant is a lot more aggressive than an Asian elephant, and a lot more dangerous, and they're larger. So Darkmane Lover says, I love to see big herds of zebras, safety in numbers. Absolutely, if there is a lion or a leopard or hyena maybe lurking close by, one of the zebras will alert the rest. They will send an alarm call through the herd, and you'll see how all of their heads shoot up, because when they're feeding, they're obviously, or drinking, they're at their most vulnerable. So they all would shoot their heads up so that they can see where the danger is coming from. So to go back to the Kruger National Park, so basically in 1926, this was when Shingwedzi and Sabi game reserves were merged. So they became one. And so this was then officially named the Kruger National Park. And so only in 1927, that was when tourists were allowed to enter the park for the first time. So as I mentioned earlier, the early visitors, they camped in simple thorn bush enclosures because there were no proper rest camps. So these thorn bush enclosures, as I mentioned, were just branches that were stacked on top of one another that formed a circle with a little gate that entered the little kraal or boma, and this would then be a sort of deterrence for predators. Not that it could fully stop a lion or a leopard if it really wanted to get to you, but definitely would be a deterrence, and it would make the people camping there feel a lot safer. And I imagine back then they probably would have traveled with their dogs, so their dogs could alert them of any danger. So I've got a question here from Alida Harps, my mother dearest, that's tuning in and watching the show. Thank you for tuning in, Alida. So she's asking, when a zebra loses its tail, does it hurt a lot, or do they not have a lot of feelings in their tails? So it would definitely hurt a lot, as there are nerve endings and there is a blood supply to the tail. And it would also be a huge disadvantage to the zebra, as they're not able to swat flies away and so protect their rump from nasty flies and parasites and that, which tend to accumulate on their rumps. So they would be more susceptible to diseases in that way. Perhaps a tsetse fly or something could land on their rump and could cause them to become ill. Right, so let's go over to Old Donyo, see if our elephant friends are still there. Back to the beautiful Old Donyo, magnificent scenes. I wish I could just teleport there right now and just sit and relax and just admire the beauty of the African bush. You can see this bull here on the right is very relaxed. So their penises tend to hang out like that when they are relaxed. Looks like this elephant to the right here is just playing around with his trunk. As I mentioned earlier, elephants are very important in creating pathways for other wildlife and for humans. So they're actually what we refer to as an ecosystem engineer. So they are constantly modifying and changing their environments because of their large size. And also elephants, they very often tend to push trees over. And so the reason for this is either to access the roots of the tree, or perhaps to access the fresh shoots at the very top of the canopy, or maybe some of the fruits or flowers that they're unable to get to. So they push the tree over, and so they're strong enough to push these massive trees over. And so when they do this, they make the tree and the fresh shoots and that accessible to other animals, and also they can create a nice nesting place for many smaller reptiles and mammals, so that fallen tree could be a home for many different animals. And of course, elephants are incredibly important as seed dispersers. So when they eat fruit and they then defecate after the fruit passes through their digestive system, it creates the pile of dung, creates an ideal environment for the seed to germinate. So perfect conditions. And of course their dung is a mainstay diet for the dung beetles in Africa. And so the dung beetles are very important in recycling all those nutrients back into the soil as they roll the dung into a ball, and then they dig a hole and they put that dung in the soil and protect it, because they lay their eggs in the dung. So when they're young or old enough, to crawl out, then they'll crawl out, and so the cycle continues. Let's see what's happening at Serengeti. There's my friends, the baboons. Very happy to see my friends just enjoying some snacks over there in the bush. Busy eating some insects in the grass, perhaps, or some grass seeds. So it looks like we've got some olive baboons over here. So they're the baboons that you would typically find in the Serengeti. So in South Africa we have Chacma baboons, which look very similar. And so I was mentioning ecosystem engineers earlier. So baboons are also very valuable as ecosystem engineers. They also transform their environment, especially because they occur in quite large troops sometimes, so they can have quite a significant impact on their environments. Also,
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Hi, I'm Cedric Dold, Wild Earth presenter and private guide. I'd love you to join me on safari. In September, I'll be at Walgevonden for a beautiful spring safari. And in November, I'll be tracking Wild Earth's famous leopards here in the Sabi Sands. Come and share the wildlife, the stories and the adventure with me. Book now and let's go on safari.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
are in control there. They're in charge there. They actually are signs there for, and also people that will allow the baboons to cross the road. There's actually people that patrol they constantly monitor the baboon populations there, and then when a baboon comes close to the road, they'll make sure that they're there, and then they will safely escort the baboons across the road, make sure that the cars stop, and so the baboons can cross. So baboons, they can occur in very large troops, sometimes up to 100 individuals. And so they've got a social structure which is known as an oligarchy. So which basically means they've got a few dominant males which will then call the shots, which will decide where they will feed and where they will go and drink water. So, and then they have a group of females and the young that will accompany them in their troop. So they've got a very flexible diet. Right, yeah. So we're at Kruger Shalati in Skukuza. Wonderful sighting of elephants, enjoying a little mud bath, getting themselves dirty. Absolutely beautiful scenes. So they would do this mud bath in order to cool themselves off, or perhaps if they've got a lot of ticks and a lot of ectoparasites, external parasites on their bodies, they would then trap all these parasites with the mud, and then as the mud dries, it basically traps those parasites in the mud as it solidifies, and then they would then rub their bodies up against a tree or a rock or some other object, and basically it will peel off the cake layer or the mud layer that's on their bodies. The melanistic marble says, "Ooh, mud wallow." So looks like a lot of fun. I know when we were younger and we ever played at a river or a waterhole and there was clay like this, we used to play a thing called clay light. Our parents definitely did this a lot more, where they would basically roll a ball of clay onto the end of a stick and then flick it at your friend, yeah, this would entertain us for hours. So definitely a lot of fun to be had in the mud. Wildlife Lady says, "Love today's live at the waterhole. Thanks Johan, FC, Africam, and all the Zoomies." But thank you so much, Wildlife Lady, for joining us. Been an absolute privilege and pleasure to be on the show today, and it's definitely been a day for the elephants. So thank you so much for joining. Sharon S says, was so nice to have you on the show today, Johan. Thanks for the company, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure, Sharon, and it was lovely that you interacted, so thank you so much for the interaction. Nice to end off with a nice shot of the elephants wallowing in the Kruger National Park, in the heart of the Kruger National Park at Skukuza. The absolutely beautiful location. So this is Kruger Shalati, which is the hotel, which is in a train on a bridge in the Kruger National Park over the Sabi River. So I think it's a very appropriate ending to the day, to a wonderful show. And so we mustn't forget all the conservation efforts of all the rangers and all the people all the different stakeholders that came before us and did magnificent work. So thank you very much for having me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful Saturday. Until next time.